Hello, my name is Yasapi Dame, and I am a researcher for the Webi think tank. Today we are discussing the dialects of piracy in Somalia. The authors of the journal article are Abi Ismail Samatar, Mark Lindenberg, Basil Mahani. The journal was published on November 8, 2010 in the Third World Quarterly. One topic that it addresses is the issue of Somali piracy being very much misunderstood. The systematic oversimplification and misunderstanding of piracy has resulted in an inability to adequately address the issue. The insurgence of piracy reflects the ups and downs of the global market and the international competition over resources. The deprivation of the domestic state can be traced all the way back to the systematic exploitation of a country. And that piracy in Somalia is facilitated by the absence of a central government. And as a result of the recent civil wars, has resulted in a war-ravaged state dictated by warlords. It is argued that much of what is characterized as piracy in the region is in fact local resistance to the loss of livelihood and ecological deprivation that visited the region. Illustrated by the comparative case analysis of the Southeast Asian and Nigerian cases, piracy is a multifaceted issue with multiple underlying layers of causation and facilitation. Due to the repercussions of globalization, their evidence indicates that piracy of this frequency occurs in the waters of third world countries, and there's an increased trend in this type of piracy as the effects of globalization increase throughout time. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Blake Armis, and I am a researcher for the Webi think tank. To support the theory that the visibility of piracy has grown due to globalization, the authors have provided several pieces of evidence. The first is that development and spread of communication technologies. Since technology is relatively cheap and easy to obtain, criminals are able to use them to communicate and organize crime. The second is the connectedness of the world economy and its global cycles. Because of this, the contrast between the wealth and the poor and how the poor is affected is more visible. The third piece of evidence is that the desire for resources has exposed the vulnerability of local populations, making their natural resources and sources of income available for criminals to steal. I do support this theory because as the world develops and advances, so do the criminals. When they see a country like Somalia, they immediately take the opportunity to exploit what they have, leaving the locals to resort to extreme measures such as piracy to stay alive and support their families. Natives to the country also take the opportunity to make money and survive, even if it means turning to criminal activities. The four types of pirates that have been operating in Somalia since 1989 are political, resource, defensive, and ransom pirates. The political pirates wanted to weaken the Somali dictatorship by blocking supplies traveling by ship from reaching government-controlled areas. These hijackings took place from 1989 to 1990. The political pirates were members of an opposition group called the Somali National Movement, which was supported by Ethiopia. The resource pirates were known as companies from Asia, Europe, and Africa that were attracted to Somalia's unprotected fishing resources and their unguarded land. The fishing resources were used for the companies to make a profit, while the land was used as a trash and toxic waste dumping ground for Europe. However, the article only discusses the fish resources. The pirates would anchor near fishing communities and drain their fish population, destroying the resource and the community's economy. The defensive pirates were basically the fishermen from the fishing communities that were being attacked by the resource pirates. Their primary objective was to get rid of the resource pirates and protect their land and fishing waters. The ransom pirates are the most often displayed in the media and are the most dangerous. They operate in a large portion of the western side of the Indian Ocean. They gather an average of $35 million annually in exchange for their hostages, just like the pirates portrayed in the film Captain Phillips. They will hijack a ship passing through their waters and take the passengers for ransom, only releasing them once they have received their money. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Martha, and I'm the group leader for the Webi think tank. According to the article, mainstream scholarships points out that modern piracy occurs when circumstances permit and has identified 4 conditions considered to be necessary prerequisites for piracy. These are the following 4 conditions. 1. The existence of a favorable topographic environment. 2. The prevalence of ungoverned spaces, either as a result of legal dispute between states or simply because of their absence. 3. The existence of weak law enforcement or weak political will of governments, or a cultural environment that is not hostile to piracy. And 4. The availability of great rewards for piracy while the risks are minimal. The action of ransom pirates offers a partial and temporary response to the plight of Somali fishing communities. I will now address what evidence the authors provide to support this theory. When the state of Somalia collapsed in 1991, it entailed the disintegration of the country's official coast guard. This paved the way for pirates from Asia and Europe to loot Somalia's marine resources. The authors suggest that the ransom piracy is embedded in the notion of defensive piracy, because for most Somalis, defensive piracy symbolizes the population's feeble effort to protect the moral economy of their livelihoods. Moral economy was first noted in the work of the British historian E.P. Thompson and was connected to the Poor People's Movement in England. It has later been used to understand why peasants rebel, that rebellions are rooted in peasants' need for subsistence security. The essence of the moral economy is that peasants and the poor in general has a set of expectations that govern their sense of justice. When such values are violated, they respond to protect their livelihood and their sense of fairness. In addition to the moral economy theory, the authors also points to James Scott's Weapons of the Weak, which illustrated that when rebellion is not feasible for the poor because of the elite's overwhelming power, peasants often turn to less visible ways of responding to the predation of the powerful. So most Somalis see piracy as a response to the political and resource predation. I do support this theory to some extent. Piracy is not an attractive way of life, and it may often feel like the last resort. When Somali waters are being occupied by pirates from Asia and Europe, and they're taking over Somalia's marine resources, this is clearly seen as injustice from the Somali point of view, as it's endangering the livelihoods. And this is where the moral economy argument comes in. And when the government is unable to do something with it, I can understand that ransom piracy may function as a partial and temporary response to the plight of the Somali fishing communities. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dalton McLaughlin. I'm a co-leader of Webi. And alright, according to our article, The Dialects of Piracy in Somalia, pirates are not outlaws, and therefore they do not view ransom pirates to be any more criminal than resource pirates. Initially, this was hard to understand because I thought that pirates that stole goods were more criminal than, say, pirates that defend the resources that are rightfully theirs. In order to understand this perspective, our authors have given us the idea of moral economy and given an in-depth analysis from Scott. Scott's moral economy has three main features: safety first, subsistence security, and an ethic that governs peasantry relations to authority. When reading this, it is clear that a connection between peasants and pirates should have been made because Somali pirates and the people from Somalia in general are peasant-like because of the poor conditions in which they live in. Subsistence security is most important to understand because it gives justification for Somali rebellions because the lack of government in the country threatens their subsistence security. As a result, rebellion occurs when colonial states or the Somalia government are oblivious to the moral economy. Of course, this occurs because there is no substantial government in the country and has not been since 1989. The rebellion I am speaking of occurs because the peasants or the Somalis are poor and have an expectation of a system that will govern their sense of justice. According to Scott, when these values are violated, the response is rebellion in order to protect their livelihood. Another interesting view of rebellion is brought up by Tanya as being viewed as, quote, merely trying to get back what has been rightfully theirs, unquote. The last interesting point brought up in Scott's analysis is the weapons of the weak. He states that rebellion is not feasible for the poor because of the power from the elite, and therefore peasants or the Somalis turn to different ways of responding to the predations of the powerful. In this case, The obvious form is piracy. In conclusion, it is easy to see why these two or any forms of piracy are no more criminal than the other. Whether it is resource pirates trying to protect their fishing grounds or ransom pirates stealing money from a merchant ship, both forms of piracy are trying to restore the livelihood of the Somali people. Personally, I believe that piracy is a criminal act, but a justified criminal act. Their acts are justified because they are trying to restore their livelihood because there is no government restoring livelihood in Somalia. As the article states, there were no acts of piracy in Somalia before 1989, the year in which the government disintegrated into nothing. As a result of this, I do believe the piracy is a criminal act, but I do not blame the Somalis because they are victims in this as well. There is no order in their country, and hundreds of thousands are extremely poor. Piracy is one way of restoring their livelihood, and for some they have no other choice. I do not believe it is morally right, but it gives their poor circumstances justification. Thank you.